know me, I'm Allie Hansen, Sales Manager for the Assisted Living and Memory Care. I'd like to welcome to you guys Ashley Trinkline and Stacy Kensinger. They are owners of In-Home Senior Fitness. They're going to give us some tips on staying strong through dementia, but I'm going to let them talk about their company a little bit more in depth before we go into our presentation, which is going to be some questions I'll ask them, and they'll answer with their professional responses.
Great. Well, thank you, Allie, for having us. Stacy and I created In-Home Senior Fitness 3 years ago because we saw a great need in continued physical and occupational therapy services, and Medicare and other insurances just weren't approving it. So we teamed up, and with Stacy's background in PT and mine in OT, we became senior fitness specialists. So we are a private pay service, and we can work with our clients as little or as much as they'd like. We do come into their home or wherever they're comfortable with working out, whether that's outside or a community gym, in their living room, their bedroom, wherever they're comfortable. We see clients in a variety of situations. So some might come to us for prehab, which is before surgery. They might need to lose weight or gain strength and stamina to get through the surgery. Some see us as a rehabilitative service. We can supplement the therapy services that they currently get. A lot of times outpatient and home health will only be able to do a couple visits a week, so we can come the days that they're not, just to help boost them a little bit quicker. Obviously, we can work with them post-rehab to continue their fitness routine. And then a lot of our clients use us as preventative care. So just like you and I would go to the gym, work out with a personal trainer, we can absolutely do that as well. So a lot of different options. We do cover the greater Tampa Bay area, West Central Florida, and Central Florida areas. So our goal is to promote active aging, and that's through strengthening fall prevention and boosting their endurance and stamina. So that's a little bit about us, and we're excited to be here and talk more about different techniques and situations with dementia.
All right, so we ready for the questions?
Sure.
Also, I wanted to mention, if you have any questions that pop into your head during this, just put them in the comment box, and at the end of our presentation, they're gonna answer the questions, and then any other questions that you have, just speak up at the end. But if you think of one, you can type it in the comment box. So what role does exercise play in reducing the risk of dementia, and how does it help people with dementia?
So a statistic that Ashley and I love to share is that according to the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation, regular physical exercise can reduce your risk for developing Alzheimer's disease by up to 50%. And also they say that exercise can also slow further deterioration in those who have already started to develop cognitive problems. So the brain is not a muscle, but it is the closest organ we have that's closest to a muscle. So we can actually grow our brain like a muscle at any age. And there was a study conducted recently where they had 80-year-olds take an MRI of their brain at the beginning of the study, and half of the applicants were given a strength trainer to work with them, and the other half of the 80-year-olds were sedentary. So after many weeks of the half training and half were sedentary, another MRI was taken, and the results were amazing. So it showed that the 80-year-olds who worked out, all of their brains actually grew in size. And those who were sedentary, you can probably take a guess, it had no effect on the size of their brain. So when our muscles contract, we are actually sending chemicals and proteins to our brain called BDNF. And the BDNF can actually cross the blood-brain barrier. And these proteins actually improve the neuroplasticity of our brain. So it was once thought that the neuroplasticity of our brain is what we were born with. When we're an adult, it can't be changed. But we now know that we can actually affect and change the cells in our brain. So studies showed that by having a higher level of BDNF in our brain, that this lowers the risk for Alzheimer's disease and dementia by up to 33%. So this means that the genes in our brain are influenced by exercise. And when they go to replicate themselves, we can influence our cells to actually be more healthy and promote cognitive function, as well as improve the plasticity of the brain through neurogenesis. So a startling statistic that has recently been published is that it's predicted that there will be a 400% increase in incidences of Alzheimer's disease by 2050. So we ask ourselves, what's causing this spike in numbers? And scientists are telling us that it's most likely stress. So stress can actually shrink the memory center in our brain. So what are some stressors that are causing this? I mean, we have nutritional stressors, we have eating processed starches, not eating antioxidants, we have sleep deprivation. So we know that the brain detoxes itself 10 times more when we are sleeping. We have our daily stressors of work, relationships, as well as physical stressors on our body that we create by being sedentary. So what is known to reduce all of these stressors we just talked about? Exercise. So exercise actually boosts the system in our brain called the glymphatic system, which is responsible for actually detoxing our brain. So just exercise alone can help detox all of those stressors. So that is kind of one way of helping to prevent dementia. So another way also, after there is a diagnosis, exercise should be continued for as long as possible. It's been, we know that it has a number of benefits, including our preventing muscle weakness, preventing mobility problems, and other health complications associated with being inactive. And it also can create a normal day to night routine, which we already talked about how sleep is so important for detoxing our brain. It's going to improve mood and increase social participation. So besides the more obvious physical benefits that exercise has on dementia, it's also essential for maintaining blood flow to our brain and stimulating brain cell growth and survival. So exercise is directly correlated to the creation and maintenance of our hippocampus, which is the area of the brain where we learn and where we store memory. So even if there is a diagnosis, we can still be working to reduce the progression of dementia. Something that I think that is an uncommon knowledge, but should be shared amongst everyone, is that studies showed that exercise can reduce and reverse age-related holes in the white matter and gray matter of our brain, which is amazing. So we also know that what makes dementia progress, it's the beta amyloid, that sticky substance on our brain. So that's what causes dementia to progress. So we know that exercise can reverse the beta amyloid on the brain. So exercise is so vast and so important, and it's important prior to a diagnosis and after a diagnosis.
All right. Thank you. That was awesome.
That was a mouthful.
Ashley, what are some good examples of exercise for people with dementia?
That's a great question. So as we know, there's different stages of dementia. Early stages, most people are still very physical, very active. They might just have some memory loss issues. So obviously we want to continue being as physical and active as possible. So that kind of a client might look very similar to you and me, working out in a gym, working out at home with, the different kinds of equipment that we can bring in, walking, the normal stuff, right? So then as we progress in the stages of dementia, it's important to remember that you can't, in most cases, in the later stages, just hand a client a dumbbell and say, okay, I want you to do 20 reps of bicep curls. That's just not going to happen. So we have to be really creative with the exercises and activities that we can prescribe to them. So a lot of people right now who may have dementia are from the generation of homemakers. So if we're working with a female who was once a homemaker and stayed at home and she was taking care of a bunch of kids, it would probably be common that she's used to standing and folding laundry, or doing the dishes or cleaning tables or whatnot. So we can incorporate that into the activities. So that's really great for standing tolerance, dynamic balance. And then as we progress into even later stages of dementia, you've probably seen some patients holding a baby doll, because they're in the mindset that that's their child. They're back, way back, when they were young and they just had a baby. So we may have them wash the baby, change the diapers. We can put wrist weights on their arms, and that's a great way to build strengthening without them even realizing that they're exercising. They're just doing their normal daily activities to them. And because we know that dementia is a group of thinking and social symptoms, it's important to remember to add cognitive exercises with the physical. So one great way to connect the mind and body at the same time is if you're, for example, working on lower body strengthening for the legs, we might have them move their foot through the alphabet. So drawing an A with your ankle, or and going through the alphabet and having them say it out loud, or it could be numbers as well, 1, 2, 3. That's just a really good example to connect the mind and body at the same time.
That's awesome. I'm taking notes.
Great.
All right. So next question is for Stacy. What are some fall prevention exercises that you recommend?
So we first always recommend balance. Balance also can help improve our memory and spatial cognition. So it's especially important for those with dementia because it helps increase our limbic system, which is the area in our brain that's kind of like navigating, kind of like Google Maps for our own brain. So taking a step up, knowing that you have a step from your living room to your dining room, the limbic system kind of takes over to do that, as opposed to, our memory areas. So working on balance can actually help improve that part of the brain. So, and that's going to be crucial with fall prevention in the home. So the best way to work on balance for what we like to do to be very safe is to stand in front of your kitchen sink with a chair behind you and challenge yourself. So it may be that you are simply just turning your head left to right, up and down, or you're lifting your arms up and down. That can throw off your balance. If that's too easy, you can progress to standing, single leg stance. Also, something for a higher level person might be carrying a weight that's heavier on one side than the other, kind of like simulating that you're carrying groceries. That's great for increasing your core stability and your balance. And that's going to be, amazing for fall prevention. So also strength training. So not just strength training sitting in a chair either. If we can, we want to be strength training the small and large muscle groups. So that means standing exercises. So a lot of chair exercises kind of overlook those small little muscles that actually help to increase our balance. So we want to do as much weight-bearing standing exercises as possible. We also like to encourage our caregivers to help our clients be as independent as possible. So doing as much physical as they possibly can. So if they are getting up from the toilet, we want to let them get up. We don't want to pull on them as much unless we absolutely have to. Doing things like that every day throughout their daily routine can really help maintain their independence and their strength. Something else for fall prevention is using the correct assistive device at the correct height. And also, having a specialist come in to check the home for fall hazards, teaching the correct transfer techniques. And that's something that Ashley and I specialize in. We come into the home, we, assess your gait. We look at, make a suggestion for the right assistive device, set it for the right height for you, and then check out your home and point out any areas that might be fall hazard.
like like rugs.
Like rugs. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are a big one for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Next question is for Ashley. What do you look for if someone with dementia is overdoing it physically, since they may not be able to verbalize it? And how would you explain to them what you want them to do?
Okay, so I think the majority, I guess the common sign that we see for fatigue with someone with dementia is agitation. They may become combative, and that's usually just their way of saying, hey, this is enough. I don't want to do this. Maybe there's just too many distractions, too much stimulation for their brain, and they've had enough. So I would say that's the number one way that we see that they're fatigued. Besides the obvious signs that would be with anybody, shortness of breath, just getting weaker, whatnot. It's also good to check their hydration. So usually you can check by the skin, or if their lips are blue, or they're turning pale, and the normal physical signs. But definitely agitation, I would say, is number one. Some ways to decrease that, or to, I guess, explain what you want them to do, is number one, keeping distractions at a minimum. So you don't want to work with these clients, in a room like the dining room, for instance, where there's a lot of commotion going on. That's just going to add to the agitation and the overstimulation. Number two would be to give simple, usually just one word commands. So if I wanted somebody to sit down, I wouldn't say in the nicest way, I wouldn't say, hi, Miss Joyce, I'd really like you to go ahead and sit down now. That's just too much. So it's better to just say, sit down, or even sit. It doesn't sound quite as nice, but they really need that, just the one word commands. And it's also important to continue to make eye contact with them, because again, they're sometimes in a different world. They may think there's a million people behind them, and there's not. So if you're looking past them or to the side, now they're going to become, paranoid that there's other people behind them. I think it's also very important to remember not to argue with someone with dementia. And unfortunately, there's a lot of family members who just haven't been quite educated yet on how to handle, or how to love, or how to approach their loved one with this diagnosis. So I'm sure we've all heard this before. We want to enter into their world. So like I mentioned before, if they're thinking that they're taking care of their baby, they're probably thinking they're back in their 20s. So for us to sit there and say, no, this is 2020, like, get it in your head, that's just not going to work. So one thing I like to do is ask the client, what year is it? And they may not know at all, but if they give you a year like 1952, then you can kind of think, okay, this is where they're at right now. This is what they think is going on right now. And you just want to enter into that world. Obviously, safety is number one. So we're not going to let them just walk out the door and walk into the street. But if they want to get up and it's safe, maybe you can put a gate belt on them and put a walker in front of them if they need it. Let them walk. They want to get up. They're people. They're humans, and we shouldn't just keep them in a confined space. So it's really important, I think, to be educated. And I think it's great that you guys are on this call today, because that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, awesome. All right, I think we have one more question. It'll be for Stacy. What is the right amount of activity for early, middle, and late stages of dementia?
So we want to be preventing decline and maintain strength and improve strength through all the levels, but it will start to vary. So the CDC suggests that we get 150 minutes each week for adults, and this includes those with dementia. So this sounds like a lot of time to exercise, but if you break it down, that's 5 days a week for 30 minutes. So in the early stages of dementia, that's the time where we want to be incorporating exercise as much as possible, because we want to get ahead of the game before there's any real decline. So take advantage of this time. We want to incorporate a daily exercise routine and a walking routine for them to maintain as long as possible. So during this time, it's wise to choose an exercise that you like and make it a daily habit. So it'll make it easier for them to recollect and perform as dementia progresses if it already was a habit in their life. So with, and this is going to continue throughout the stages, you're just going to want to do as much as possible, but we want to have it at appropriate levels. So what's the appropriate level of exercise? The American Heart Association recommends moderate activity. So what's moderate activity for someone? So something that we can all do is take the talk test. So for the talk test is for a light activity range, you are able to talk and sing. And for a moderate activity range, you are able to talk, but you're not able to sing. So we want to try to get for that level. Now, it's not always going to, we're not always going to be able to make it to the moderate level. And that might be for some people just sitting up out of their chair 5 times and back down. That might be their moderate, but we want to strive for that. Now, heavy activity would be that you are barely able to speak a few words. So we don't want to overdo it. We don't want to stress the body too much. We want that nice moderate level of exercise, which has been proven to be the most beneficial for our brains. So you may notice that as the dementia progresses that your moderate level may change, but we, like I said, want to strive for our own individual level of moderate activity through the rest of our lives.
That's awesome. Thank you, ladies, so much. I learned so much today. I have my monthly group. Since it's in my building, I'm always like running around, like things are happening, so I don't get to actually like sit through the whole thing and really learn. So I'm glad I got to sit through this and hear y'all and your expertise.